Okay, before we go any farther, I have to get this out of the way. Yes, I kept saying I was not going to get the OOO's toys. I said I wouldn't be reviewing any of the roleplay gear for this year's Kamen Rider. I got sucked in, okay? Okay, I have this thing with anime props, okay? So I needed medals. But I kind of figured this out, because my whole basis for that argument, for that stance, was that the OOO's Driver isn't worth it right out of the box. And I stand by that statement. I just don't think it does enough for the asking price. However, if you get something that's more worth the asking price off the bat, like a can droid or a metal set, you work your way backward instead of most Rider series where you buy the belt and then everything goes with the belt. You buy something a little bit more appealing on its own. Then you go buy the belt, so that the price of the belt now pays for extra features with whatever you bought first. That works its way a little better, and I feel a little bit more comfortable with my budgeting. So yeah, I got started. So let's get started with the review, as I count my first medals. 1, 2, and 3. Behold the Medajalibur, the primary weapon of Kamen Rider OOO's and this year's official sword toy. Now, as always, I'm going to start with the details because I think you need to know these things before buying a toy of this expense. Now, you can see, as always, it is a stumpy version of the weapon from the series. But this one is a little bit more advantageous, as I will show you with the engine blade that I have previously reviewed. Now, this one I was kind of okay with, but check this out. The Medajalibur, not only a good bit longer, by a good inch or so I'd say, a heck of a lot bulkier. There is a lot more girth to this thing. It feels like some kind of giant meat cleaver in my hand. It feels really solid. Detail-wise, you can get a good look at all the paint apps and molded details here. There are a lot of them, as always. And as most Rider toys go, there's several different textures to the plastic as you move along. There's some rough spots, mostly smooth in this one though. Unlike Double's roleplay toys, these tend to be a lot cleaner in design, much more perfected. But a lot of the details remain the same. The silver paint, they love it. It's all over this thing, all over the back, because American toys kind of forget the back. And you have a lot of this blue detailing that's also metallic flake that I really like. And that gold stripe goes all the way from the top, all the way to the rail, which if I had an OOO's Driver, I would be able to demonstrate the scanning charge with that. I don't, so I'm not going to. Form-wise, though, it is a fair bit better than most Kamen Rider weapons. And speaking of details, let's look at those medals I showed off before. You get 3 cell medals with this, just enough to activate everything. Starting with this one, the Tora cell, which is the most familiar emblem to most. We also have Kamakiri, the mantis, and Kuwagata, the stag beetle. And these are molded just like the ones in the show. You can see the X pattern molded in on the back, and they're all plastic. But that's all the detail you need to see, so let's get to the important part. All the sound effects and gimmicks you get with this. Now, this might be a little bit harder to hear than it should be, because the speaker is on this side, while the light is on this side, and I have to show the light. So, we're going to activate it now. And you can see it's not the best light gimmick, it's just a little light up there, but it'll respond to all the noises correctly. Works just like in the show. Your cell medals go into the slots there, which is spring-loaded. So press it down enough, it drops it right in, and we can keep going. Three is the maximum loadout, so don't try shoving more in there at all. Now, once it's ready, take the plunger, give it a press. The sound effect from the show is there, and I appreciate them doing it, but it is kind of annoying that the sounds precede each other, whereas in the show they overlap. It's not quite accurate, and it is a little bit annoying that you actually see the metals drop into the blade before you hear the sound effect associated with the function. That's a little bit of a flaw, but not too much. It's kind of a trend with Bandai's noisemakers. They kind of insist on you being able to hear each individual noise cleanly, even though they only have one speaker and one sound channel to work with. Now, that was pretty much just to demonstrate the full gimmick. Let me break it down now, just so you get a full effect. To remove, there's a little lever here on the top, which, as you can see, is this completely clear rail, which is actually a pull-out sleeve. Upside down, you'll note they're not falling out. 1, 2, 3. And give it a press, and back in it goes. Now, the way the gimmick is engineered is actually really impressive because it's really idiot-proof. I mean, any way you could really sabotage this thing doesn't really work. I mean, you can't load any metals into this side of the sleeve as long as it's out of the blade like this. You can't load in more than 3. If I have 3 in the blade and I try to load in more and drop them down, they won't go. Pretty much any way you have of intentionally or accidentally breaking this thing has been engineered out of the toy, which is a really thoughtful thing to do. Now the sound effects get really interesting because we're going to demonstrate that button on the underside of the handle. Let me turn it back on. Now, I'll give it a push here so you can tell the normal slashing noise it makes. You can see the light acting in response to it. That's a pretty basic, very quick slashing noise though. So let's try feeding it some metals. Just 1 to start. Now, if I try hitting that button again, noise gets a little bit longer. Now, let's try that again with 2. Hitting the button again. It's a multi-stage sound now. Finally, we'll demonstrate 3 at a time. Now, just to clarify at this point, this doesn't have any scanning device in it. All it does is tell how many coins you drop into the slot at one time. And it doesn't have to be any of the metals it comes with. It can't tell the difference. I can try with this Taka cell metal, for instance, and it acknowledges it the same way it does its own. Now, sound effect. There's a lot going on this time, isn't there? The more you pay it, the more effective the sound effects get. So it's kind of like having a child on an allowance. But there is actually one more, the power down noise. The cells have now expended their power. If you don't hit the button in about, 20, 30 seconds, the cells run out of energy and you're back to the standard slashing noise. I actually really like when a toy does that because it's kind of an ammo limit. You have to reload it, you have to keep it active. And it kind of fits in with the limited power of the cell. Now that should be the end of the review, but I'm going to cheat just a little bit. Remember when I said I couldn't demonstrate the scanning charge? I lied. I don't have the OOO scanner to actually activate it. However, you don't really need it. The scanning charge, or at least the swords portion of it, is activated by pressing a little button that you can see just under the beginning of the rail. Normally, when placing the scanner on the blade, that's where it would start, so it would hit that button, activate the sword's noise, no matter what was going on inside the blade. Notice, there are no metals loaded into it right now, none in the slot. This sound effect doesn't require any. So, we're going to hit that all on its own. You can see, little sound effect, the light comes on and stays on, waiting for you to hit the button one last time. big, big sound effect. So essentially you're getting 5 different levels of attack strength out of this thing, which I think is pretty impressive considering most of these sword toys you get 1, maybe 2 different slashing sound effects. I mean, even the metal shaft I think only had, what, 2 or 3 in it. So this is actually a really impressive item. And, as I said, the gimmick works brilliantly. It's actually really satisfying, just the sensation of loading in the metals and dropping them in. I mean, I've fooled around with this thing way more than I should have before this review, just because, I don't know, it's a fun little involved gimmick. I like how interactive it is. So, overall, if you want to get into OOO's toys, but maybe the belt's a little bit more expensive than you want, or maybe you're like me and you don't think it does enough right off the bat, this is probably the best place to start. And right now over at HobbyLink Japan, it's the easiest OOO's toy to get. It's the only one that doesn't sell out the minute it comes in stock. So it's a really easy, really, really good way of starting off an OOO's collection. And when or if I even decide to get the OOO's belt, I'll have the scanning charges, I'll have some extra cell metals to use with it. I'm started right off the bat with a little bit more than the belt offered before. That is, if I even decide to get it. Sorry.